how do you see agents in the workforce? I'm in the
Yeah,
workforce.
yeah.
I heard this thing, agents are coming.
Right.
How
Right.
should I be thinking
Yeah,
about
no,
that?
look, my whole career, and yes, Jim, it's just since the time of PCs. Sorry, I don't know much about anything before that,
Come
but my whole
on,
career,
man! I touched the green screens.
yeah, there you go. We have talked about the idea of this automation of technology will bring about this reduction in labor. It's a natural, because labor is a huge part of the cost for a business. Now, the reality is, in a lot of those implementations, the businesses grew as a result of the technology, right? It's a little bit of a Jevons paradox in that sense. They didn't get smaller. They didn't fire those people. Usually the technology does find, for example, and when I was working in the retail industry, it found fraud, and those people did have to go, but not the performance oriented loss
Hey,
of
Mike,
workforce.
could you pause for a second and describe Jevons Paradox for those who haven't heard that
Oh
term?
yeah, sure. Thanks. Yeah, sorry for that. So yeah, Jevons paradox is just the observation that when efficiency improves, right? So let's say you're using a resource and you get a lot more efficient at it. And the original example is like coal and engines and steam stuff. When efficiency improves, you think you would need less of the stuff because, it's more efficient now. The reality is it makes it cheaper to use that stuff. So then you need even more of it, right? So the paradox is, even though you got more efficient, the demand went up, right? And that's exactly
Steam
what
engines
happened.
got more efficient. Steam engines got more efficient, but we needed more, we demanded a lot more coal.
Yeah, because we had a
Despite
lot
the
more steam engines. Because
that's
suddenly
right.
these steam engines are really cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Sorry. Go on. I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
So anyway, I mean, look, they're the famous cases of, like, Klarna firing a bunch of people that were on their help desk, or Commonwealth Bank is another one. These things
They
show up
famously hired a bunch back, by the way.
Right. No, that's
Didn't work
exactly the
out.
point, right? Where they're trying to make some headlines by being the ones that fired people, and then they end up, being bitten by that and hiring those folks back and regretting it. And so I think this is no different than when we outsourced a lot of technology back in the early 2000s. It's no different than when the internet introduced a lot of efficiencies, and suddenly software didn't have to be kept in service, right? Like, these things do change the way that industry works, right? They do impact productivity, but they don't radically throw away the people or the tech that was there before. They become a layer on top of it.
I'm gonna disagree with Mike, just for the
Okay.
sake of taking the other side here. So I think this will be the largest disruption over the next decade that we've seen, certainly in our lifetimes. I think a lot of jobs will go away. What happens when those jobs go away is, is there room for all those same companies to grow and create? Unsure exactly what that means, but I think it's going to be disruptive. So I think if you're in the workforce and you've been doing the same thing for, let's say, 20 plus years, and now there's a much more efficient way to do it, you're going to feel that pain, because you might not be interested in learning another job. You might not be interested in modifying things. In fact, I'd say I've spoken with several folks who are kind of like, I'm glad I'm at the tail end of my career, because all the new stuff is like, I don't want to deal with it. Now, I think if you're coming out of school and you're getting your first job, it's also disruptive in a sense, right? You're expected to more quickly become, productive, right? And potentially expected to produce more by leveraging tools that haven't existed previously. So I think it's an exciting time, and it's a scary time for folks. And the sort of the disruption will happen, and so that will create pain. There'll certainly be winners and losers in the space, right? So if you're working for a company that's a winner in the space, it may be great upside. If you're working for a company that's a loser in a space, it may be more downside than upside.
There's a tendency always for people, and that includes us, to think that we're living in a moment that's so unique and that couldn't possibly have occurred before. So I totally agree with the disruption. There have been plenty of disruptions previously, and the market economy has been able to adjust and figure out. Now, maybe I'll buy into the fact that this is going to happen potentially so fast that the ability to sort of reabsorb and figure it out could create some trouble in that regard. So I sort of buy into that, but I think that water will find its level. I do think very much so for people early in their career or just starting out. I don't know that it's an issue alone of, hey, they got to pick up new technology or these expectations. Heck, I mean, generally people think that people earlier in their career are more able to do so. I think there is a little bit of a reluctance in the market right now to hire for the same reasons that people are sort of frozen and not jumping into AI. I think there's hey, I'm frozen and we're not going to hire because we're trying to figure out what's going to happen here. And I definitely think that that we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown because of that.
That occurs to me as the wrong way to think about it. In other words, like if I look at software development, where probably there's the most disruption in terms of the productivity of the tools, it seems silly to say, well, I'm going to hire less junior developers altogether. If you take a smart person who's able to quickly learn how to leverage the latest tools, arguably you're getting, you're getting more productivity than you'd ever expected. And so, it's interesting. Like if I just look at us and other software companies that I'm close to, you can't really measure like the productivity, even though like we're using these tools. You can't just say, oh, we're shipping a ton more features much more quickly, right? There's still a bottleneck somewhere in the process. That's not necessarily the code writing part of it. And so you kind of still need you may be getting to prototypes and demos much sooner, but there's still, the process of delivering a true product to the market, which is gated by lots of other things besides, writing lines of code. And the more you can hire talented people early in their career who are aren't necessarily so set in their ways, I think the more opportunities you've got to kind of accelerate the growth of your company.
Software engineering, whole labor market. I'm thinking about the broad labor market, and if you're in marketing or if you're in supply, it doesn't matter where you are. I think there's a little bit of a, hey, let's think about our hiring right now because we don't know where water's going to find its level in terms of how AI is going to impact. I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's smart. And I agree with your comments, especially in the technology space. But I do think I can feel it a little bit when I talk to clients that's going on out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the disruption, I guess, is starts early, right? When you're uncertain, as opposed to
and I think to the disruption point, I'm probably on the side of ultimately, I think it ends up being really good. I mean, I think was it in the when the printing press was developed, a lot of calligraphers went out of business, right? And so we were all farming 150 years ago, and none of us are farming anymore. So there will be a pretty massive change. And the other thing that strikes me is, from just the magnitude of change perspective, I think what we're looking at is probably greater than anything we've seen, at least in our lifetime, probably greater than the industrial age. And it's going to happen faster.